Hello, and welcome to episode 279 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, from 1942. From Preston Sturges, we have The Palm Beach Story. This was one I admittedly bought the Criterion of a couple of years ago, and it was really cheap. I had no idea that it was actually a well-renowned film. I mean, obviously it's in the Criterion collection, so of course it must have some amount of cachet. But Preston Sturges is a name that I know of, but have never really dived into and have still no real knowledge of. But Claudette Colbert, I definitely is it Colbert or is it Colbert? I don't know. I'll go with Colbert, Stephen Colbert. It happened one night, classic 30s screwball. I don't really remember that film. That's the thing. I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and it happened one night. I remember enjoying it. It felt like it lived up to its reputation of a kind of, romantic comedy classic. Remember very little about it. I enjoyed the kind of barbs that were traded between Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert in that film, but you can only retain so much. It'd be interesting to go back to that review, and it might all flood back then, which is kind of a good thing of some videos where I do forget things over a decade in my past. Not that film specifically was 10 years ago, but it's a lot of films I've talked about over the years on this channel. But the Palm Beach Story, it was just interesting to see her without that kind of signature look that she had in It Happened One Night, and so different kind of hair. Same kind of feel, really. I felt like she still had that same kind of spirit within her. Just a real firecracker of an actress. I feel like a lot. I don't know whether there are actresses who could adapt to that kind of screwball comedy style, that kind of strong, kind of feisty woman who, that motor mouth dialogue, which is so emblematic of screwball comedies. I don't know whether actresses get good at doing that or whether you cast the right woman to do it, or the right actor, of course. But there's just a certain, and that's what I really like about screwball comedies, is that there's a real fierce central female character to that, which is just really fun to watch, where the man is always on the back foot. It's just a fun dynamic I've always enjoyed in films. And so Claudette plays Geraldine, Jerry, and her husband is Tom, played by Joel McCrea, and their kind of marriage is kind of falling apart a bit at the beginning. Money is an issue, and right at the beginning of the film, in fact, someone is shown into her apartment to rent it because she hasn't even paid rent. And there's this wonderful sequence where this old man who's a potential kind of a new tenant for this lavish apartment that she has, I believe in New York, and he comes in and he's the weenie king. And this guy is played by Robert Dudley, who is almost the MVP of the whole movie for me. This guy, the weenie king, he reminded me a bit of Gordon Cole from Twin Peaks, where he can't really hear anything and he misremembers all these different things to great comedic effect. And he eventually wanders into Jerry's bedroom, and there's a whole sequence where she's hiding in the bathroom. And it's the kind of thing where it's like this ridiculous thing where the character is hiding from another character, and just all these things happen where they would surely see them, but through the magic of movies, they just about get away with it until he finds her in the bathroom, and they have a really interesting chat, and he just takes a liking to her. He's a very matter-of-fact guy, still can't hear half of what she's saying, and then he offers her all this money because he's rich beyond any kind of almost normal comprehension of finance. To him, giving her hundreds of dollars, which at that point in time would be equivalent of thousands of dollars, is just no skin off his nose. And so he actually ends up kind of saving her skin a little bit, but instead of rejoicing and kind of building towards maybe a new life with her husband and having their debts paid, she decides that she's going to leave her husband, and that their marriage is not what it used to be, and that Tom is better off without her, and she's going to go off down to Florida and just find a rich man to dig her claws into, basically. And Tom, he doesn't agree with this, and so the whole film is really about this contentious central conceit that she wants a divorce or wants to separate, but it's never really the most convincing sell from her. And so But I did find that was really fun because I wasn't entirely sure how much she believed in it herself. And Tom, of course, wants his wife back. He doesn't want to separate with her. And there's some really nice scenes between them, and there's a lot of fun scenes between them where the dialogue again is just so snappy and fun and funny as well. It's a really funny film. Now, on the cover of the Blu-ray, there's a train, and so I was like, oh, I love like train sequences in movies. And in the second act of this film, she gets on a train, and I was like, oh, I hope the whole film takes place. The rest of the film's on this train. I would say the first act of the film is the setup. The second act of the film is her journey down to Florida on the train. And then the third act of the film takes place in Florida and is almost entirely different. And I would say that my least favorite act of the film was the train sequence, unfortunately. I enjoyed it. But there's this whole stretch where she comes across this millionaires boys club, all these old men who get her onto the train. She's got no money. And I think it's the, what is it, I was going to say the steak and ale, but it's the something in quail. I don't know, the ale and quail club or something. I don't know, but these guys they're on a hunting trip, and they're all kind of looking after her and stuff, but they just get crazy. And there's this one sequence where these two old boys are sat in this train car, drunk blind, and they're like, well, I could probably hit this target. Like they're just huffing and puffing and blowing smoke and saying that the other one's got a better aim than the other. And they ask the man who's behind the bar, can you throw a biscuit up in the air and I'll shoot it. And so he does it, and he just shoots the window out from the train. And the other guy's like, well, I didn't think you were going to use a live ammunition. He's like, well, of course I am. What else would I be using? All right, well, give me a shot then. And it just devolves into such madness. You have all these guys. Funny now that I talk about it. They're just shooting this train car. The windows are getting smashed. The alcohol's just flying, glasses strewn about the whole place, and eventually they end up just disconnecting the whole cab from the train and driving off, leaving them on the tracks. It's funny, but it dragged on way too much for me, and it was superfluous to the main plot, and wasn't funny enough to sustain its own little mini universe that it was occupying in the film. So the third act of the film was probably my favorite because we have this very strange quadrant of characters that emerges. So Jerry meets this man on the train called John D. Hackensack III, played by Rudy Vallee. And he's this really sweet character at first. When they first meet, she kind of breaks his glasses twice. And her quest to find a bit of peace and quiet to sleep that night on the train. And I love the idea of sleeper trains as well. So I did enjoy the train sequence. I just think that that whole comedy sequence with the Millionaires Club just kind of wore out its welcome with a vengeance. So she meets this guy John, and he wants to take her out and buy her new clothes because she left her clothes on the cab that they got disconnected on. So she's got nothing, and so he's going to take her out, he's going to treat her, and he's got this little notepad of all these things he's buying her, and it seems too good to be true. But we eventually learn out that he's another millionaire, money to him is nothing, and so he falls in love with Jerry, and Jerry maybe finds a way that she could, be wooed by him. But Tom has other plans, and he's actually made his way down to Florida. He actually has his own encounter with the Weenie King, who gives him money to go and kind of save his marriage, which is a wonderful kind of return to that opening sequence where he's giving money to Jerry. It was fun for me to see the Weenie King pop up again. I just thought he was such a funny character. And so Tom arrives, and Jerry's in the middle of kind of romancing this millionaire. And when she sees her husband there, she's like, what are you doing? And she introduces him to her potential new husband as her brother. And now she's introducing her brother to John Hackensack's sister, who is a princess, played by Mary Astor. And so now the princess has kind of got a thing for Jerry's husband. And this is where it feels very much like a screwball comedy. Just me describing that in very basic terms feels a bit convoluted, but it all makes sense when you're watching it. And so you have these two romances going on that shouldn't really be going on, and then you have the husband and wife who are kind of covert, almost undercover, at this big mansion estate, and they're trying to keep the secret, and at the same time Tom is desperately trying to save his marriage to Jerry. And the way that it all wraps up was pretty much as I was expecting, because there's a spanner thrown into the works that kind of makes the whole situation even more difficult. But I could see where it was going to flip the expectations, subvert it a little bit, and so I saw what the twist was when it came. I was fine with that. I thought that for a character who could have been quite unlikable to the audience, which was Rudy Vallee's character of the guy coming in and taking Jerry away from her husband in a way. He's really likable, and everyone's likable in the film, so it was just a really enjoyable film for me. There wasn't really a bad character in the moral sense, and so I just really enjoyed this film. I had an absolute blast with it, and even though I guessed that twist of kind of the interpersonal drama that was going on, there's a gag at the end of the film that just it takes the film off into the deep end. I still don't know if I think it's completely absurd or whether it's absurdly brilliant, but it's certainly an ending that I just thought, I was sat there just laughing in disbelief at the final note that they decided to push the boat out on for this film. And actually, one other note is at the very beginning, there's this incredible opening titles, or at least there's this text on screen. And I'll try and put the clip in, actually, because I don't know how they did this in 1942. It just looks so crisp, and it's almost an impossible shot. I don't want to know how they did it. With cameras the way they were back then, I'm just not sure how they did it. There must be an answer, and it's probably really simple, really ingenious, and I almost don't want to know. That was just a fun thing right at the beginning. Like, wow, that was a really cool, just technical flourish there at the beginning for an otherwise kind of routine film in terms of cinematography and stuff. But I loved Claudette Colbert in the film. I really enjoyed Rudy Vallee. The Weenie King was a was a highlight to me. Joel McCrea, I think, did a good job with a character who maybe is the least interesting of the bunch. Mary Astor was a lot of fun as the princess. Screwball comedy style, I loved it. Is it a film you should see before you die? I don't think so. I don't quite see the classic edge to it, but I loved it, so I really, there was nothing, well, again, maybe as I mentioned, that sequence I didn't like, but otherwise, broad strokes, I really, really loved it, but again, it just didn't reach maybe that higher upper echelon of like maybe Bringing Up Baby or the Philadelphia Story in terms of like the really pushing it to the next level somehow with the characters. And I think maybe it has to do with the fact that this is kind of in a way, a road movie. Where Jerry goes off, she leaves New York, she gets on the train, she gets on a boat, and maybe other films that have more time with characters in one location, like the Philadelphia Story, or even in Bringing Up Baby, which does get a bit exhausting, as I mentioned in my review for that, with the constant barrage of heavy dialogue. And that's actually something I really enjoyed about the Palm Beach Story, is that it had that screwball tempo at times, but it didn't overdo it. It found a really nice balance in the dialogue, which I really enjoyed. So in some ways, maybe I feel like it is, it's superior to other screwball comedies in certain ways, but maybe not overall. So it's not a film you should see before you die for me, but I absolutely loved it. It's one I'll watch again and again, if for nothing else but to see the the great Robert Dudley as the Weenie King. So that's my thoughts on the Palm Beach Story. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And I'll see you in the next one.